الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وحبيبنا رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن والاه. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت الحكيم العليم الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وقل ربي زدني علما. اللهم سدد خطانا ووفقنا لما تحب وترضى ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. Alhamdulillah. So yesterday we went over the what's called in the Western tradition the Wheel of Fortune, which in our tradition it's simply just the mudawala that Allah tells us in the Quran, تِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ, that there's ups and downs in life. And one of the things that Imam al-Junayd said, and Sidi Ahmed Zarruq mentions this in the Hikam of Ibn Ata'illah, where he says, لا تستغرب وقوع الأكدار ما دمت في هذه الدار. Don't be bewildered or find strange the occurrence of calamities, difficulties, tribulations, as long as you're in this abode. As long as you're in this abode, expect tribulation. الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا. He created death and life to test you, to test you, the bala. So it's a bala. If you read the Quran, all the prophets had tribulation. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ said, أَشَدُّ النَّاسِ بَلَاءً الْأَنْبِيَاء ثُمَّ الْأَمْثَلُ فَالْأَمْثَلُ. That the people that have the greatest tribulation are the Anbiya, and then those next to them, and those next to them. The Prophet ﷺ at the Battle of Al-Khandaq, when they came complaining about the hunger they were suffering, some of them showed that they were, because the Arabs used to have, this was now they do this because people eat too much. So they have what's called gastric bypass. The Arabs, because they went through periods where there was very little food, and they would actually feel the pangs of hunger, which are not pleasant. And so what they would do is it's basically an external gastric bypass. They would put a flat rock and tie it very tightly. Women used to wear girdles for this purpose, so that they didn't overeat. But the Prophet ﷺ lifted his, and he had 2 rocks. Just to show them that, because he would give all his food to whoever needed. He always preferred other people over himself, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu said that أَصْرُ الدَّارِ دَارُ الْبَلَى. The foundation of this abode is bala. Imam al-Junayd said, لا أتبشع مما يعرض علي في هذه الدار. I don't find anything that happens to me in this abode bothersome. Bashi'un, like disgusting or bothersome. He said, because asaltu aslan, I have a foundational principle that I understand. هذه الدار دار هم وغم وفتنة وبلاء. What he understood was the nature of the abode. حكم هذه الدار. The nature of this abode is hum, gham, fitna, and bala. That's the nature of the abode. And so he said, فَإِذَا رَأَيْتَ غَيْرَ ذَلِكَ فَهُوَ فَضْلٌ. And that's, if you see other than that, it's the bounty of Allah. And you should be in a state of immense gratitude, because the only reason we lose the gratitude, the bounties, is because of kufran and ni'mah. That's all. لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. If you show gratitude, and the problem is a lot of Muslims think that gratitude is just saying Alhamdulillah wa shukru lillah. That's what they think gratitude is. Gratitude, الشكر صرف العبد ما أولاه من نعمه في رضاه كما قال الجوادي ليعقوبي Imam Muhammad Mawlud. Shukr in Matharat al-Qulub. Shukr is to use what God's given you in obedience. That's what gratitude is. There is shukr al-lisan, and that's important, but shukr al-arkan is really the true shukr. And that was the state the Prophet ﷺ was in. So when you think about this, there's one other dimension. For those of us, and most of us, I mean, if we're honest, all of us, are still out here. We should at least realize that the goal is not to get here. It's to get here. The markaz. That's the goal. It's not here. That's where too many Muslims are focused on here. When you're here, you can handle being here or here. But if you're not here, then the next best thing is the following. Ibn Ata'illah al-Iskandari, he was a great faqih, he was a Maliki faqih, and he ended up taking the path of tarbiyah with Abu al-Abbas al-Mursi, one of the great salihin of Egypt. But he was very distraught. He was in a bad state, and he went to Abu al-Abbas, and he told him, and he told him, the states of man are only 4, and women. The states of humanity, there's only 4 states that you're in at any given time. You're either in ni'mah, so that's blessings, and that corresponds with regno, right? Or you're in ma'asiyah, and that corresponds with you're on your way down. Because if you're in ma'asiyah, you're in a bad state. So you're headed down. You could feel it's a ni'mah because you're enjoying it at the time, but it's not. You're headed down. Or you're in niqmah. And niqmah, we get the word muntaqim from it. Niqmah is the opposite of ni'mah. Or you're in ta'ah. And that's a hopeful state to be in. So the ni'mah, we experience joy. The ma'asiyah, it should put you, if you're a believer, into a state of fear. And fear is what leads to tawbah. Joy should lead to shukr. Niqmah this is sorrow, because when bad things happen, you become sorrowful. Niqmah should lead to sabr. Sabrun jameel, wallah al-musta'an. Right? I mean, that's basically, I mean, he's lost his son, Yusuf alayhi salam, right? And he's a prophet. So what does he do? He doesn't go into a state of faza', jaza'. He doesn't, right? And he knows they did it. But there's nothing he can do about it, because he understands this is all from God. So what does he do? Sabrun jameel, wallah al-musta'an. Beautiful patience. The ulama say beautiful patience is not to complain about the difficulties you're in. And some of them say that complaining doesn't negate the sabr if you're muhtasib. Because sometimes you have to complain. Right? Like Khabbab ibn al-Arat. Right? Who knows Khabbab ibn al-Arat? Is anybody? Khabbab?
Isn't he the one who complained about the adhab?
Yeah. But who was he as a Sahaba? Does anybody know? Khabbab ibn al-Arat.
He was roasted. His flesh was...
Yeah, good. But who was he? That's what happened to him. Who was he? Nobody? You guys have to read Sirah. He's one of the first Muslims. He's also the first Muslim to openly say that he was Muslim. He was a Najdi from Bani Tamim, but as a child he'd been kidnapped. He was kidnapped, and he was sold in Mecca. And that happened. The Arabs used to do that. The tribes were marauding tribes. Suhaib al-Romi was stolen when he was a child. and sold into. Salman al-Farisi was a free man, sold into slavery. So Khabbab, he was a qain, like a smith. He used to make swords for the people of Mecca. He was owned by a woman, the woman that bought him, Anmar, very sick woman. And when he became Muslim, what happened was, because he announced his Islam, he couldn't keep it in. Because the Prophet ﷺ was in the time of Kitman, but he couldn't keep it in. And he started telling people, why don't you listen to this man? He was mustadaf in Mecca, right? He didn't have any power. The people that had power, and this is important to note because a lot of Muslims don't appreciate this fact. The Prophet ﷺ had protection in Mecca. Not all of his Sahaba had protection. Not all of them had protection. He had protection. So this idea that we all have to suffer collectively is a false concept. And people should rid their minds of this idea that because some of us are suffering, all of us have to suffer or throw ourselves in the line of suffering. We should have hum and be concerned about those people like the Prophet ﷺ was, but we also have to have wisdom, hikmah. So Khabbab, what Anmar did, she got some of her ruffians amongst the Quraysh. They went, held him down. She took his tools and she literally branded him because he was a smith. She branded him with hot iron, torturing him. He actually suffered from it later on. He became very wealthy. He lived in Kufa, but he suffered. So, and Bilal ibn Rabah and Ammar ibn Yasir and Khabbab, they suffered more than anybody else in terms of just ta'deeb. Sumayya also, she was killed, we know that. But Khabbab goes to the Prophet. And it's a very interesting hadith. It's in Sahih Bukhari. It's a very interesting hadith to me. Because it says, Khabbab says, I found him mutawassidun, burdatan, fi dhill al-Ka'bah. He was reclining. He had his burda like a pillow. And he was reclining in the shade of the Kaaba. In other words, what it appears in the hadith is that he was in a very comfortable position. He's lying down. He's in the shade of the Kaaba, not in the heat. And what does Khabbab say? أَلَا تَسْتَنْصِرُوا لَنَا يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ أَلَا تَدْعُوا لَنَا يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ Won't you give us victory, O Messenger of God? Won't you call on God to punish these people? In the hadith that's in Tirmidhi, he gets up and it says, مُحْمَرْ وَجْهُهُ. His face was red. The ulama differ. Some say it was from the wisada, and others say it's because he was upset at what Khabbab said. Now you have to realize Khabbab is really suffering. So what does he say? Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He says to Khabbab, the people before you, كان الرجل من قبلكم, the people before you, right? يجاء به فيجعل يحفر له حفرة فيجعل فيها. They used to dig a pit, put him in the pit, and then they would come with a minshar, and they would literally cut him in half. And he said that wouldn't لا يصده عن دينه. لا يصد ذلك وذلك لا يصد عن دينه. That wouldn't prevent him from his religion. And then he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or they would take amshat and they would rake his flesh and tear it from the skin until it went to the bone or the nerve. Imagine, he's talking about torture. And this is Khabbab's being tortured, but not as bad as that. So and this is an important qa'idah, because one of the things Ibn Abbas said, in any tribulation, in any musibah, there's 3 ni'am. The first one, it could be worse. And that's what the Prophet's letting him know. I know that you're suffering, but it could be worse. And that's a ni'mah. So he tells them, this is what happened. They rake the flesh over. And he said, Wallahi, by Allah, Allah is going to complete this affair. لَيُتِمَنَّ هَذَا الْأَمْرِ. Allah is going to, حَتَّى يَسِيرَ الرَّاكِبُ مِنْ صَنْعَاء إِلَى حَضْرَمَوْتِ. A traveler will go, and he chose a place that was known for قُطَعْ الطُّرُقِ, a bad area. A traveler will go from Sana'a to Hadramaut, لا يخاف إلا الله وذئب على غنمه. He won't fear anything except Allah and the sheep the wolves from devouring sheep. And then what did he say? وَلَكِنَّكُمْ تَسْتَعْجِلُونَ. But you are trying to hasten something that's not coming yet. In other words, be patient. Be patient. If you're not ready for victory, if you don't have the tazkiyah, it's a blessing that Allah won't give you victory, because it's better to be an oppressed than an oppressor. And if you don't think people right now in the Arab world, if they were given victory, what do you think they're going to do? What did they do to Gaddafi? Seriously. And he was a bad guy, undeniably. What did they do to him? Did they take him to a mahkamah? Did they follow the rules of engagement? They could have taken him to a mahkamah, tried for crimes against the people of Libya. No, they ripped him to pieces and filmed it. Is that how our Prophet came into Mecca? Seriously, is that how he came? Is that how Salahuddin al-Ayyubi came into Al-Quds? Is that how he came into Al-Quds? Even when they tried this guy Mubarak, you know, look at Nelson Mandela. He's not even a Muslim. When he came into power, and these are people that imprisoned him for the best years of his life, imprisoned him, put him in the worst prison, tortured him. He was tortured. Did horrible things to him. He's not even a Muslim. And when he gets into power, he has the prophetic sunnah, and what does that do? Everybody, everywhere, except the worst type of people, love Nelson Mandela. Seriously, they love him. Because he practiced the prophetic sunnah, which proves that even a non-Muslim, if he practices the prophetic sunnah, it will have the same effect on the hearts of the people. But if we're not practicing the sunnah, Allah's not going to give people. Why should He give us victory? I can't find anywhere in the Quran where it says, Inna Allah ma'al muslimin. Show me in the Quran where it says, Inna Allah ma'al muslimin. Where? Who's Allah with? What's the ma'iyah with Allah? Inna Allah ma'al sabirin. Inna Allah ma'al ladina taqaw. Wahum muhsinun. وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا مُجَاهَدَةً. That's in Ankabut. That's a Meccan surah before jihad of the sword. Those who do mujahada, in other words, struggle against themselves. وَاللَّهُ مَعَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Allah is with the muhsinin. The Prophet ﷺ, his deen, the Muslims, like Omar, when he wrote to the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, Sa'ad, he said to him, you better be in a state of ta'ah, because Allah لا ينصرنا بالعدة ولا بالعدة وإنما ينصرنا بالطاعة فإذا استوينا في المعاصي نصرهم علينا. If we're the same in our disobedience, He gives them victory over us. He gives those with their kufr, He will give them victory over disobedient Muslims. Why? Because if they get victory, they're going to disgrace the religion. It's better to be oppressed than to be an oppressor. If you're not ready for power, if you're still in this thing, you're not ready to be here. Because when you get there, you're going to do what everybody does. When they get there, you're going to become the tyrant. And Imam Malik said, never believe anyone. This is in Qadi Abu Bakr's Ahkam al-Quran. He says, never believe anyone يخرج على الحاكم ويقول سأصلحه حينما أتولى الحكم. Don't believe those who say, I'm going to rectify things once I get into power. He says, you'll see, once they get into power, they'll be the same as the one that was in power. What does Allah say about the munafiqun? إِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ لَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ. What do they say? إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ مُصْلِحُونَ. That's always what the munafiqun say. The awliya, they don't say we're muslihun because they're too afraid to make that claim. In fact, in the Quran, Imam Qurtubi says the first proof that they're liars is that they claim to be muslihun. That's the first proof. So all these people talking about islah and once we get into power, we're going to set things right. That should be a big red flag for you. لا نعطي هذا الأمر من طلبه. We don't give this person, we don't give this, هذا الأمر is the word in the prophetic tradition for power, state power. لا نعطي هذا الأمر من طلبه. We don't give this to people that seek it. We don't give this to people that seek it. There goes elections. Gee, there goes democracy. Vote for me. وَلَا مَنْ حَرَصَ عَلَيْهِ. Or those who are in power and they're clinging to it. Because all the intelligent people, they don't want to be in power. Malik Idris tried to, كان يتنازل عن الحكم. He tried in Libya several times. He said, I don't want this. I just want to go and worship Allah. And they wouldn't let him. Those are the type of people you want in power, not people seeking after it. Oh, but the Prophet Yusuf, اجعلني على خزائن الأرض. Make me على الخزائن الأرض. If you're the Prophet Yusuf, I'll trust you. And then that was also dawah strategy, because he was showing them, he wasn't asking to be the head of the Muslim state. He was asking to show the disbelievers what righteousness is. That was his dawah. So these are the responses. If you're in ni'mah, the response is shukr, gratitude. If you're in ma'asiyah, it should instill fear in you of the adhab of Allah, and that should lead to tawbah. If you're in niqmah, difficulties, tribulations, then isbiru wa sabiru. Be patient and tell others to be patient. Wal asri inna al-insana lafi khusr. By the nature of time, you're in loss, you're losing. Illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihat wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. That's it. Tell each other what the truth is, and then tell each other to be patient. And then if you're in ta'ah, you should have hope. But ta'ah, the corresponding virtue of ta'ah is shuhud al-minnah. It's to witness the gift of Allah, that you had tawfiq, so you don't get arrogant. Allah says, ثُمَّ أَوْرَثْنَا الْكِتَابَ الَّذِينَ اصْطَفَيْنَا مِنْ عِبَادِنَا فَمِنْهُمْ ظَالِمٌ لِنَفْسِهِ وَمِنْهُمْ مُقْتَصِدٌ وَمِنْهُمْ سَابِقٌ بِالْخَيْرَاتِ بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. In that ayah, the ulama say that the first one, he begins with ظَالِمٌ لِنَفْسِهِ for raja, for hope. So this is the ma'asiyah. So you have a believer who's in ma'asiyah, ظَالِمٌ لِنَفْسِهِ. But he's still من الذين أخذ نصيبا من الوراثة. He took a portion of the wiratha. أورثنا الكتاب الذين اصطفينا. So he's Mustafa. He's a chosen if he's a believer. And so that's to give hope. And then the muqtasid in the middle, because he inclines to both. Sometimes he's in ma'asiyah, sometimes he's in ta'ah. And these are the nafs al-ammara, nafs al-lawama, and nafs al-mutma'inna. The last one, sabiqun bil khairat, is the only one that Allah says, bi-idhnillah. He doesn't say the other ones, because that will say, oh, the reason I'm sinning is because, Allah kataba alayya hada shay. No. But for the one who's in obedience, what does Allah say? He's in obedience because Allah permitted him to be in obedience. And that's why you should have shuhud al-minnah. So as long as we're out here in this outer circle, these are the ahwal that we should encompass. So, Allah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This book, which is the Ihya Ulum al-Din, الحمد لله أرويه بسند متصل عن شيخ العلامة شيخ عبد الله بن بيه إلى المؤلف أبي حامد حجة الإسلام أبي حامد الغزالي رضي الله عنه وأرضاه. From his sheikh, the great scholar of Mauritania, العلامة شيخنا بن محفوظ عن طريق الأقذفية. So, the first book is the book of knowledge. But before we do that, I want to look a little bit at why he wrote this book. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. ربي يسر وأعن وتمم بخير يا كريم. قال الشيخ الإمام الأوحد زين العابدين شرف الأئمة حجة الإسلام أبو حامد محمد بن محمد الغزالي أو الغزالي رحمه الله تعالى. أحمد الله تعالى أولا حمدا كثيرا متواريا وإن كان يتضاءل دون حق جلاله حمد الحامدين. So he praises Allah and he begins his book with that. And he says that this praise is insignificant in relation to the right or what's due to God in terms of the praise of those who praise. وأصلي وأسلم على رسوله ثانيا صلاة تستغرق مع سيد البشر سائر المرسلين. And so this includes all of the prophets. I ask for benedictions and peace upon my prophet, the messenger, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And this is a salat that includes all of the other messengers. وَاسْتَخِيرُهُ سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى ثَالِثًا. And then he did istikhara, which is to seek the good from God, whether it's a good thing to do what he's doing or not. He wrote this, he began writing it once he started his path. He abandoned his position at the university and set out, and he began to write this book. And he said, فيما انبعث له عزمي من تحرير كتاب في إحياء علوم الدين. So this azam, and he said amba'atha, this, he uses a passive form, that this azam came into me, this desire, this intention, this resolution to write this book in reviving the sciences of the religion. وانتدبوا لقطع تعجبك رابعا أيها العاذل الغالي في العذر من بين زمرة الجاحدين. Okay, now the trolls. He's literally dealing with the trolls right at the outset. And he said, and I'm going to cut off your amazement at what I'm doing as the fourth thing. Oh, you critic, excessive in your criticism. Min baini zumrat al-jahidin, from amongst all these people that just reject everything. Right? So he's already starting out, that he knows the trolls are there. Oh, so you're writing a book on Ihya Ulum ad-Din, right? Why aren't you fighting the Crusaders? المسرف في التقريع والإنكار, excessive in all of their fault finding and criticisms and rejections. من طبقة المنكرين الغافلين, from amongst this group of rejectors in their heedlessness. It's pretty interesting, isn't it? Huh? فقد حل عن لساني عقدة الصمت, because my tongue now has been freed from the silence that God had placed upon it. He's let it open now. So watch out. وطوقني عهدة الكرام قلادة النطق ما أنت مثابر عليه من العمى عن جلية الحق مع اللجاج في نصرة الباطل وتحسين الجهل والتشغيب على من أثر النزوع قليلا عن مراسم الخلق ومال ميلا يسيرا عن ملازمة الرسم إلى العمل بمقتضى العلم طمعا في نيل ما تعبده عز وجل به من تزكية النفس وإصلاح القلب وتداركا لبعض ما فرط من إضاعة العمر يأسا عن تمام التلافي والجبر وانحيازا عن غمار من قال فيهم صاحب الشرع صلى الله عليه وسلم أشد الناس عذابا يوم القيامة عالم لم ينفعه الله سبحانه وتعالى بعلمه. So this book is really for the ulama. I mean, he wrote this because he was living at a time of furqa, sectarianism, of dissension, There were terrorists. They were called the Hashashin. They killed his patron, right? Right? The same people today that would call him a scholar for dollars. Right? Seriously. And that's why they don't like him. Even today, there's people they don't like him. Even though for 1,000 years he was honored in our ummah as Hujjat al-Islam. His book was taught. Al-Quds the Tahrir of Quds was at the hands of a man who mastered this book. Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi. Read هكذا ظهر جيل صلاح الدين. Read that book and you see what his madrasa did for the ummah. So he's saying about these people that, you know, they're actually involved in giving nusra to falsehood, not to truth. And they're making ignorance look good because they don't know what true knowledge is. They follow the forms, the outward. And this is really all they have is covetousness in their hearts, and they're avoiding purifying their nafs and rectifying their hearts. And they've wasted their life in this. And later he'll say, and trust me, I know because I was one of you. Right? So he said, don't think I'm talking from just theory. ولعمري لا سبب لإصرارك على النكير إلا الداء الذي عم الجم الغفير بل شمل الجماهير من القصور عن ملاحظة ذروة هذا الأمر. And by my life, the real reason for your continuation in this criticism is the sickness that has encompassed the masses because they don't understand what the whole point of this affair is. وَالْجَهَلْ بِأَنَّ الْأَمْرَ إِدٌّ وَالْخَطْبَ جِدٌّ. Forgetting that this is a momentous thing in your life. This is not a game. This is a momentous thing. This is a dangerous affair. This is a serious affair. الْآخِرَةَ مُقْبِلَةٌ وَالدُّنْيَا مُدْبِرَةٌ. The akhirah is coming quickly and the dunya is leaving you behind. وَالْأَجَلْ قَرِيبٌ وَالسَّفْرَ بَعِيدٌ. The end of your life is coming and it's going to be a tough journey because this is just a small stage in this matter. وَالزَّادْ طَفِيفٌ. You don't have any provision. وَالْخَطَرْ عَظِيمٌ. The danger is great. وَالطَّرِيقُ سَدٌّ. And the road is blocked. وَمَا سِوَى الْخَالِصِ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ. Except for those that are sincere for the sake of Allah. مِنَ الْعِلْمِ وَالْعَمْرِ عند الناقد البصير. رد وسلوك طريق الآخرة مع كثرة الغوائل من غير دليل ولا رفيق متعب مكد. Unless you're joining your knowledge with action and you have a critical, discerning understanding and taking this path of the akhirah with all of its hardships, difficulties, with all of its treacherous aspects, is extremely difficult if you don't have a guide and a companion on this journey. فأدلة الطريق هم العلماء الذين هم ورثة الأنبياء. The guides on this tariq are the ulama. Now he's defining them though. I mean those who inherited the prophetic inheritance. وقد شغر عنهم الزمان. Where are they? The time we're living in, they're gone. وَلَمْ يَبْقَى إِلَّا الْمُتَرَسِّمُونَ. I mean, this is like 900 years ago, people. So what you think now, all these enlightened people out there, all these enlightened people in Iraq, you know, in Mosul, this guy who's got a degree from لم يبقى إلا المترسمون. Formalists, people trapped in the shallowness of this religion. وقد استحوذ على أكثرهم الشيطان. Shaitan has taken over the majority of them. واستغواهم الطغيان. They're trapped in extremism, طغيان. فأصبح كل واحد بعاجل حظه مشغوفا. He's only thinking about immediate things, right? He's not thinking, he's trapped in that thing right there. That's all he's thinking about. He's not thinking about the long term. فَصَارَ يَا الْمَعْرُوفُ مُنْكَرًا وَالْمُنْكَرْ مَعْرُوفًا. He sees good as evil and he sees evil as good. He sees blowing up babies on a bus because they're Jewish as a good thing. Seriously. Well, they'll just grow up to be enemies. حتى ظل علم الدين مندرسا. We don't see the sign of this religion. ومنار الهدى في أقطار الأرض منطمسا. And the minaret of guidance has been obliterated. They blew it up. They're blowing them up, the minarets. Right? ولقد خيروا إلى الخلق أن لا علم إلا فتوى حكومة وتستعين بها القضاة على فصل الخصام عند تهارش الطغام. This is what he's dealing with at his time. They think that knowledge is the fatwa of a government that the qadis, the judges, use to resolve the rioting masses' disputes. أو جدر يتدرع به طالب مباهات, or some argumentation and dialectic that the seeker of impressing others uses إلى غربة والإفحام to win his arguments and expose the faults of the others. وسجع مزخرف يتوسل به الواعظ إلى استدراج العوام, or this eloquent language ornamented in order for the preacher to pull in the masses. إذ لم يروا ما سوى هذه الثلاثة مصيدة للحرام وشبكة للحطام. Because these other than these three, it's just a masyada for the haram, it's a trap for the prohibited, and it's a net for the chafe of this world. فأما علم طريق الآخرة وما درج عليه السلف الصالح. As for the knowledge of the next life and the path that the Salaf al-Salih followed, مما سماه الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه فقها وحكمة وعلما وضياء ونورا وهداية ورشدا, فقد أصبح من بين الخلق مطويا وصار نسيا منسيا. But as for the path of the Akhirah that the Salaf followed and what God called in His book fiqh, understanding and wisdom and knowledge and light and brilliance and guidance and discretion and discernment, this has become amongst the people lost. It's completely forgotten. وَلَمَّا كَانَ هَذَا ثَلْمًا في الدين ملمة, when this was a dangerous opening to this religion, وَخَطْبًا مُدْلَهِمًّا, and this dark, gloomy affair. رأيت الاشتغال بتحرير هذا الكتاب مهمة. I realized I need to preoccupy myself with writing this book. إحياء لعلوم الدين, to bring back these sciences. كشفا عن مناهج الأئمة المتقدمين, to show people the path of the people that went before us. وإيضاحا لما هي العلوم النافعة عند النبيين والسلف الصالحين والسلام الله عليهم أجمعين. To show them the beneficial knowledges that the prophets brought and that the Salaf al-Salihin used. وَلَقَدْ أَسَّسْتُهُ عَلَى أَرْبَعَةِ أَرْبَعَةٍ. I have built it upon 4 quadrants. The first quadrant is the ibadat. The second is the adat. So the first is the devotional practices. The second is habitual practices, like marriage and commerce, buying and selling, what we'd call mu'amalat. And then the third is the muhlikat, the destructive tendencies of the human being, and the fourth is the munjiyat, is those things that are salvific that will save you. وصدرت الجملة بكتاب العلم, and I began with the book of knowledge. لأنه غاية المهم, because this is the end all. This is the purpose of this matter. لأكشف أولا عن العلم الذي تعبد الله عز وجل الأعيان بطلبه على لسان رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم, in order to show you what true knowledge was, the knowledge that God has demanded of us to know on each person in order to worship Him properly, on the tongue of His Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم. إذ قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم طلب العلم فريضة على كل مسلم. Seeking knowledge is an obligation on every Muslim, and the idraj of the hadith, which is added by the ruwat later, wa muslima, because there was some ulama early on claimed that you didn't teach women and the women just followed the men, and they put that in there to emphasize that this included men and women. And that's in Ibn Majah, that hadith. So as it's related in the book of Ibn Majah, it says Muslim wa Muslima, man and woman, even though Muslim contains both. وَأَمِيزْ فِيهِ الْعِلْمَ النَّافِعْ مِنَ الضَّارِ, and I distinguish between beneficial knowledge and harmful. إِذْ قَالَ صلى الله عليه وسلم نَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنْ عِلْمٍ لَا يَنْفَعْ, because the Prophet ﷺ said, I seek refuge in Allah from knowledge that doesn't benefit. And we have so much of it. You think of all the things we know of no benefit. I mean, I could give you lessons in things I wasted time learning, or things I learned before. Just total waste of time when I think about it. It's like, why did I waste my time learning that? وأحقق ميل أهل العصر عن شاكرة الصواب وانخداعهم بلامع السراب واقتناعهم من العلوم بالقشر عن اللباب. And then I prove to you that the people of my time, they are taking the outward only, and they've been fooled by a brilliant mirage. And they're content amongst the knowledges with the chaff and not the actual grain. They just have the outward of it, the qishr. And then he goes into the books that are in there. And this is the architecture of the book, which is very fascinating. He begins with Kitab al-Ilm, and then he has the Aqa'id. So the first he lets you know what ilm is, but then he goes into the Aqa'id, and then Tahara, the secrets of Tahara. And he says in here that I put this in the form of a fiqh book because I know everybody loves fiqh books. So I'm kind of tricking you to get into it. And he said, just like he said, I read a book by a man who wanted to teach medicine, and he knew astronomy was more popular than medicine, so he wrote his medical treatise like an astronomy book. So, and then the asrar of the prayer, the asrar of zakat, the secrets of fasting, the secrets of hajj, the secrets of the kitab adab tilawat al-Quran, the comportment, the courtesies of reciting the Quran. Kitab al-adhkar wa da'awat, the book of adhkar, of all the dhikrs we do, and the prayers. Wa kitab tartib al-awrad fi al-awqat, and the book of putting our awrad in their proper times, because there's practices that you should be doing every day. وَأَمَّا رُبَ الْعَادَاتِ, it has 10 books also. There's 40 books. Each quadrant has 40. So he has the adab of eating, the adab of marriage, the adab of earning a livelihood, the adab of the halal and the haram, the book of halal and haram, the adab of suhbah, of friendship, from the different types of creation, you know, all the different types of people that you find in the world. The book of uzla, the book of retreat, the adab of safar, the courtesies of traveling, the adab of sama' wal wajd, the adab of listening to things that affect the heart, like poetry, inshad. So there's adab to that. Kitab al-Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy an al-Munkar, the book of calling, enjoining good and forbidding wrong. And then the book of the adab of Ma'isha wa Akhlaq al-Nubuwah, the book of livelihood, and then the akhlaq of the Prophet, which is the 20th book. It's the heart of the book, right at the center. And then he's got the muhlikat. And the first, he begins with the wonders of the heart, the Riyadatun Nafs, the book on the Afat al-Shahwatain. And I'll talk about that, the two shahwa, the stomach and the farj, which is the concupiscible, concupiscible desire, the lower nafs, because the nafs has three. It has the quwwa shahwaniyya, which is the concupiscent soul, which is the lustful, the gluttonous soul. And so he talks about breaking those two things, lust and gluttony, because they're the foundation of all ma'asiyah. And you have to learn to control them. You have to learn to control your eating, control your sexual habits. and then shahwat al-batan, which is shahwat al-batan and fard. So that's the, and then kitab afat al-lisan, the dangers of the tongue. And then the dangers of ghadab, hiqad, and hasad, the dangers of anger and of resentment and of envy. Kitab Dhamm al-Dunya, the book on censoring the temporal world. Dhamm al-Mal wal-Bukhl, censoring wealth and miserliness. Kitab Dhamm al-Jah wal-Riya, censoring stature and ostentatiousness. And then Dhamm al-Kibr wal-Ujub, the dangers of arrogance and vanity. And then the last one, Dhamm al-Ghurur, delusion. So those are the muhlikat, those will destroy you. And he took the most important ones, because all the other ones fall under them. Ruba' al-Munjiyat, and then the last section are the Munjiyat, and there are 10 books. The book of Tawbah, it begins with Tawbah, that's the beginning of the path. And then the book of patience and gratitude. So patience in tribulation, gratitude in blessings. The book of fear and hope. The book of poverty and detachment. The book of Tawheed and Tawakkul. He put Tawheed and Tawakkul together because he said without true Tawheed and not learning your Aqidah, he's talking about really witnessing God in the creation, like seeing that everything comes from God. That's the only way that you'll rely on God, when you realize everything's from God. Right? إِذْ قَالَ النَّاسُ إِنَّ النَّاسَ قَدْ جَمَعُوا لَكُمْ فَاخْشَوْهُمْ. Be afraid of them, the people, they're gathering against you. فَزَادَهُمْ إِيمَانًا. They got increased in faith. وَقَالُوا حَسْبُنَا اللَّهُ وَنِعْمَ الْوَكِيلُ. Right? Because that shaitan يُخَوِّفُ بِهِ أَوْلِيَاءَهُ. Shaitan's just trying to frighten his friends. But the friends of God aren't frightened by that. They're not frightened by tribulations in the dunya. Kitab al-Mahabba wa shawq wa uns. Now we're getting closer. Love and desire and uns. Wa-rida, contentment. Tuma'nina, because now you've gone through all these phases, so you're getting closer to the real, the hub. Now he's moving towards the center, the hub of the affair. Kitab al-Niyya wa sidq wa ikhlas. Your intention, your sincerity, your truthfulness. Kitab al-Muraqaba wa muhasaba. Now that you're in this position, you have to be aware. Don't get arrogant. Be vigilant about yourself. Take your soul to accounting. And then Kitab al-Tafakkur. Now you're ready for meditation on the truth, the highest thing. Kitab al-Tafakkur. The Prophet said to be in tafakkur for one moment is better than 60 years of ibadah. Tafakkuru sa'atan khayru min 60 sana ibadah. This is the highest. He's taking to the highest thing of this religion. But it's an arduous path. وَكِتَابْ ذِكْرَ الْمَوْتِ. And then the book of remembering هَذَمَ اللَّذَاتِ. أَكْثَرُ مِنْ ذِكْرِ هَذَمَ اللَّذَاتِ. Do a lot of remembrance of the destroyer of pleasure, the destroyer of delights. And that's the end of the book. And then he goes and tells you what he does in each one of them. Now, he says much of what he's written has been written before. So why do this again? Right? Because a lot of it, he has a methodology. His methodology is Quran, Hadith, Akhbar. So he gives you always, in the book, he'll give you the Quran, all the ayahs that deal with whatever subject or the most important ones. And he wrote a book called Jawahir al-Quran, which he drew out of the Quran because he said that the Quran has basically two major functions. And so he drew out of that those ayahs that are to teach you about God, and then those ayahs that are to teach you how to get to God. And that's basically the function of the Quran, to understand your Lord and then to understand how to get to your Lord. So the Quran is in essence a description of the destination and then a map. And like in the Rihla book, it tells you what to bring, right? Didn't it? It tells you like here, you're going to need this, you're going to need this, you're going to need this. So the Quran is basically, it's that map, and then it gives you the instructions for the provision you'll need for the journey. And so he identifies those ayahs, and he says all the other ayahs are simply to embellish those two functions. They just add weight and more details, but that's really at the essence. And so he says this book is unique because I simplify what was made complicated by others, and then I also give details of what was summarized. I organize it in a way that it wasn't organized before. I am concise where others have been long-winded, and I am rigorous about taking the best positions. And the fourth one is I avoid repetition, and I assert the best positions in all these. So these are basically, and then the fifth, he says, تحقيق أمور غامضة اعتصت على الأفهام. So I'm really explaining those ambiguous and obfuscated matters that were difficult to grasp, that the previous books really didn't deal with. And then, very important, he says, why did I do this book? In 4 stages. He said the first is that this tartib is necessary. On your path to God, he's doing it as a necessary way of following it. Because knowledge, he says, to the akhirah is divided into mu'amala and mukashafa. It's divided into how your proper and prudent actions, but it's also mukashafa, which is the unveilings, and that is what explains what's right. ما يطلب منه كشف المعلوم فقط. So he's defining his terms now. So by mu'amala he means ما يطلب منه مع الكشف العمل به. So what the actions that sought after us. And he says, in this book, I'm only dealing with mu'amala. I'm not dealing with mukashafa. Because he said the prophets, when they spoke of mukashafa, they did it in symbolic language because it's too difficult for people to grasp. And it's a dhawqi matter. It's a matter of experience. It's not a matter that is articulated. And so he left that. But the mu'amala is what we've been given the taklif of. And then he said, ilm al-mu'amala is of 2 types. Zahir and batin, right? And that is either ibadah or ada. And then it's either mahmud or madhmoom. So this is his justification. You have outward knowledge and inward knowledge. So outward knowledge would be like what you're supposed to do, how you pray, all those things. Inward knowledge would be like the heart. Like you're supposed to pray with khushu'. So that's not an outward knowledge, that's an inward knowledge. And then you have ibadah and ada. You have devotional practices, and then you have customary practices. And then you have either praiseworthy or blameworthy. So you have the madmumat and you have the mahmudat. The Prophet is Bashir and Nadir. He gives you glad tidings about the mahmud, and he warns you about the madmum. And so that's the muhlikat and the munjiyat. And then he said the second reason is because إني رأيت الرغبة من طلبة العلم صادقة في الفقه الذي صرح عند من لا يخاف الله تعالى للتدرع به. And then the second reason is I notice that all the students of knowledge, what they really want to learn is fiqh. Because and it's not because they fear Allah. It's because it's useful in their climbing up the ladder. So they have ambitions. And he said, these people, and mutazayyi bi zay al-mahbub mahbub. The person that wears the clothes of the beloved, people will like him for that. And so I put it in this clothes, hoping that they'll like it for that reason. But the danger of this book is that if you read it, it has an effect on you. Right? Because people, students of knowledge, when you read the section on the people of the dunya, students of knowledge of dunya and students of knowledge of akhirah, if you're honest with yourself, you're going to see yourself a lot in that other section. And it's going to affect you because he's serious. And some of the psychology that he has, he talks about, why all these, he said, why all these scholars and orators, why they're so obsessed with condemning others. Like he talks about that. Why are they always condemning others? They don't. And he explains it really well. It's very dangerous too, because he explains the Machiavellian nature of it, so it can be used for good or evil. What time is it? 9:35. So that is the introduction. So when he gets to Kitab al-Ilm, I mean, the first thing that he's saying, there's two types of knowledge. There's knowledge of the inward and the outward. And then there's blameworthy and praiseworthy knowledge. So for instance, magic is a knowledge, right? You can learn magic. And astrology is a type of knowledge. Because knowledge is anything that can be taught. That's the definition in our religion of knowledge. It's anything that can be conveyed or taught. If it can't be taught or conveyed, it's not knowledge. If you're not able to teach it, you're not an alim of that knowledge, of whatever that knowledge is. So if you learned grammar, but you can't teach it, then you're not really a scholar of grammar. You might speak well, but you're not a scholar. You have to be able to convey the knowledge. And so the great gift of the human being is nutq. This is the great gift. And that's why knowledge is communicated. Animals do not have this. That's why they're not called natiq. In Arabic, natiq means rational as well. Natiqun means rational, as well as a speaker. So natiq is someone who's speaker. But it also means rational, because mantiq in Arabic is the word that was used for logic. Mantiq is logic. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ar-Rahman 'allama al-Quran khalaqa al-insan 'allamahu al-bayan. So this is mahal al-imtinan. Allah is yamunnu alayna. And Allah is al-Mannan. It's one of His names. He can remind us of His blessings. For a human to do that is considered madhmoom. But Allah, for Him to do it, it's mahmud. It's of His, because all His attributes are praiseworthy. So Allah reminds us that He gave us the gift of speaking. And that should engender gratitude, which means using your speech for what's beneficial. وَقُولُ لِلنَّاسِ حُسْنًا. Speak good to people. مَنْ كَانَ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ فَلْيَقُلْ خَيْرًا أَوْ لِيَصْمُتْ. If you believe in Allah and the last day, speak well or be silent. Speak good, say good things, or be silent. Right? This is what the Prophet ﷺ told. He told us to use the gift of tongues, not to backbite, not to speak ill of people. And if you're warning about people, you speak in generalities. You don't speak specifically about individuals. The Prophet used to say, "Ma baru aqwam." What's wrong with people that do this and that? Right? Now, obviously, if they're completely deviant, then that's a different matter. So that's hikmah, to know the difference. So when you look at the gift of language, what is underlying this gift is the ability of understanding. Which is that we have fiqh, and he'll go into these terms, right? We can gain knowledge. So we have understanding. Allah has given the human being the ability to understand with the intellect. But the intellect by its nature has problems. One of the major problems of the intellect is that it's a triune intellect, right? You have 3 brains in your head. You have this R stem, you have a midbrain, and then you have this frontal lobe. In our tradition, and this is confirmed by science, even though they knew this a long time ago, the R stem is the Amara. It's a reptilian brain, right? And most of the people in power are functioning like reptiles. That's why there's all these crazy theories about them being reptiles in reality and remove their masks and they're really lizard people and things like this. That is because they behave like reptiles. Now, I spent my summers on a cattle ranch when I was young, so I spent a lot of time with lizards. There were lizards all over the place. I used to watch them. They're very interesting creatures. The Arabs say, أحير من ضب, more confused than a lizard. And I understand what that means. Somebody can hear that, but if they don't know lizards, they won't know what that means. Because a lizard, when it comes out of its hole, it's like, it looks so confused, you know? But one of the things, lizards are always petrified. They're just in a state of fear. They're always afraid. And so the reptilian brain, at the root of it is fear. It's fear. But it has another quality, fear and desire. And so this is the shahwa, right? The quwwa shahwaniya. This is the concupiscible soul. It's the soul that desires food, desires sex, desires security, all these things. That's the nature of that soul. So it functions at that level, and that's why it's very primitive. And propagandists, advertising agencies, they understand this very well. And that's why they control the masses through social engineering by keeping them in this brain. This is where they keep the majority of human beings. They're in this brain. And it's a very low brain, but there's a reason why it's there. It's not a negative thing in and of itself. It's negative when it overrides the other brains. Imam al-Ghazali called this the pig. He called this the pig soul, that its nature is like a pig. It just eats and eats. It'll eat its own young. That's what a pig does. A khinzir will eat its own offspring. And so in that way, if it's left to its own devices, it becomes destructive. The midbrain is the center of the emotions. And this is, in our tradition, called the quwwa al-ghadabiyya, the irascible soul. One of the things that, since we're in Mawlana Rumi's city, one of the things that Rumi said is the reason God prohibited alcohol, I mean, this is his hikmah. You can't really say other than, I mean, Allah said that it's harmful, but it says that shaitan wants to sow hatred amongst you. And so what Mawlana Rumi understood from that, he said the reason that Allah prohibited alcohol is because most people, if you remove the veneer on their intellects of rationalism, they become angry. And that's why drunks often become very belligerent. And so he said it's really veiling people from this aspect of themselves. Because if you haven't controlled yourself, if you haven't learned to control yourself, you have this anger in you. And that's why the Prophet, when the man said, Awsini ya Rasulullah, he said, La taghdab, don't get angry. Awsini, la taghdab, 3 times. Don't get angry, because this quwwa is very powerful. Now this quwwa is actually, it has a purpose. And its purpose is related to the nafs al-lawama, because its function is to get angry for the right things. It's to blame what's wrong. And so the irascible soul has a very important function. But the highest, and this one Imam al-Ghazali called the dog. The dog. This is the dog soul. Because the dog is a guard. This is the guardian soul. It's a guard. And then the last one is the quwwa aqliya. It's the faculty of intelligence or intellect. Aqliya means to intellectus, it means to read inside is one of the meanings. So it's an internal, it's something that happens inside of you that's related to the Furqan. It's an intellectus. It's what is able to discern right from wrong, true from false. And that's why this part of the brain needs to rule these two. But what happens is this overrides this and this overrides this. And so you have the markub becomes the rakib. The beast becomes the rider. And the rider becomes the beast. Right? It gets flipped. And this is unfortunately where most people reside in these two lower dimensions. So there's pigs and dogs. You know, there's just people that are consuming and not thinking about the consequences of their consumption. And then there's just angry people that usually aren't able to consume because the consumption is being withheld from them. And so they live in a state of resentment, envy, and anger towards the people that live in the pig state. A little harsh, but that's pretty much what it is. Because they quickly join that group when they get into better circumstances. So this one he called the sage or the sheikh. And he said this one has to rule these two. Now, what's interesting, because this is similar to Aristotle's model, but Imam al-Ghazali added a fourth, quwwa, here. So Aristotle has three, because Aristotle talks about this. Imam al-Ghazali added, and this is Quranic also, I mean, you know, because Aristotle said it, if it corresponds with reality, then it's truth. Doesn't matter who said it. So the Muslims weren't afraid to take from other traditions if it was useful. But this is in the Quran. I mean, this understanding is very clearly in the Quran. And it's in the Hadith. So if you look, knowledge is what is necessary. But knowledge is not enough. Because you can know the truth and you don't follow it. So what was the dua of the Prophet? Allahumma arini al-haqqa haqqan warzuqni ittiba'a. Show me the truth as truth, because you can see the truth as falsehood and you can see falsehood as truth. Wa arini al-batila batila, and show me falsehood as falsehood, warzuqni ijtinaba, and give me the ability to avoid it. This is tawfiq. So knowledge is not enough. The knowledge has to be coupled with practice. We have to practice what we learn. And so, if you look, all of the Sharia, according to our scholars, all of the Sharia can be reduced to two fundamental principles. Anybody studied Usul al-Fiqh? What are they? Okay, those are the 5 or 6 universal. But what are the two? Izz ibn Abd Salam and other Usuli scholars reduced everything down to 2 fundamental principles in Sharia. All of Sharia is to do 2 things. Yeah, jalb al-maslaha. Jalb al-maslaha wa dar al-mafsada. So it's to accrue good or benefit and to avoid harm. Jalb al-maslaha is the accrual of good. Yajlibu al-maslaha. What's good for you. Wa dar al-mafsada. And to avoid what's bad for you. Now the way that we do that is through these 2 powers in our soul. Because the shahwa desires good by its nature. And the quwwa ghadabiyya is there to protect us from harm. That's the purpose of quwwa al-ghadabiyya. It's to protect you from harm. That's why you get angry when you see wrongs done either to yourself or to others, and you want to change it. So you want to ward off the harm. The shahwa is to yashtahi, he desires what he deems good. Now the problem is, if you don't have the arbitrator of the aql, if you don't have this arbitrator, then you're in trouble. Because أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ, don't you use your brains? The aql, you have to have the aql. The aql is developed. It's not something we're born with it in development. It takes time. It develops physiologically, but it also develops spiritually. It develops intellectually. So in physiology, how does it develop? Intellect. How does it develop physiologically? Huh? Okay, myelination, all these things, but how is that done? What's the operative, what's necessary for that to happen? What's that? Nourishment, right? Yeah, you have to eat the right foods. We know now that kids that lick lead, right, they get neurological problems. We know that kids that have malnutrition have lower intellectual abilities because they weren't nurtured. You have to nurture your intellect. You also have to nurture it intellectually. The intellect needs intellectual nourishment. Garbage in, garbage out. If you read Pulp Fiction, it's mush for your brain. It's junk food for your brain, intellectually. If you waste your time reading empty things, right, then you're stunting your intellectual growth. But it also needs spiritual nourishment. You have to give it spiritual nourishment through prayer, through dhikr. This is how, because the intellect, the aql, is another word for ruh. They're all related. The sir, the qalb, the ruh, the fu'ad, these are all mutaradifat, according to the scholars. These are all synonyms for the same thing. The aql is the ruh when it moves towards intelligibles. So you call it aql when it's looking at the intelligibles, things that are known, either palpably or known intellectually, abstractly. Like we know, if I see a cow, I know the cow. My intellect understands that's a cow. If you talk to me about liberty, my intellect understands that as an abstraction, because you can't particularize liberty. You can show examples of freedom, but you can't show freedom. Nobody can point and say that's freedom, because it'll always be a particular of freedom. So the intellect can understand universals. Now, what Imam al-Ghazali, and this is the fourth thing that he added. What he said was, this was not enough to control these two. You had to have a fourth faculty, and that faculty he called adlun. It's the faculty of balance. Because he said the intellect could go to extremes. And these quwwas can definitely go to extremes. And so he said each one of these three needs to have adala. And that is the operative mechanism within the soul that enables people to function healthfully, intelligently, rationally, spiritually, spiritual well-being. All these things come from balance. كَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. We made you a balanced ummah. The wasatiyya is here. That's where the balance is. Because what's in here, if this is balanced, the behavior will be balanced. If this is imbalanced, the behavior will be imbalanced. And so he said you had to have this balance, and this is acquired through learning and through discipline and through riyada, and it takes a long time. Most of us are given a lifetime to do this. Ibn al-Munkadir, who was the teacher of Imam Malik, said, I fought my soul for 50 years, jahadtu nafsi 50 sana hatta istaqamat li, until it was finally upright for me. That's Malik's teacher in Medina, who was one of the greatest scholars in the history of Islam. He's one of Imam al-Bukhari's men. Ibn al-Munkadir said, I fought my soul, mujahada, 50 years before I got it under control. People, this is all ajala. This is hard work, but you have to be consistent, just like exercising. You have to exercise. You have to do it every day or you fall apart, right? Really. You have to eat right. You can't just eat right sometimes. You have to eat right consistently if you want to be healthy. And this you have to have balance. And so this is how it's done. Now with the quwwah, these two quwwah, they have virtues. The shahwa, or this concupiscible soul, it's the highest virtue of it is love, right? And then it has the virtue of joy, farah and hub, right? And then it also has this desire. So these are the three qualities. Now, when it's under the control of balance through the intellect and the will, through the aql and the irada, when it's under the control, then this quwwah shahwaniyah, it loves the good for its own sake. It loves good for its own sake. It has joy when it obtains the good. That's why للصائم فرحتان. فرحة حينما يفطر. It's the farha it's the joy of obtaining the good, right? So it has this joy. And then it has desire when the good is absent. And this leads to himma. So when the good is absent, it desires to get what's good. Now what happens is the intellect decides what's real goods. See, the aql is what tells you what are the real goods, what's really good for you. The Prophet ﷺ said, حُفَّتَ الْجَنَّةُ بِالْمَكَارِهِ. Paradise was surrounded by dislikeful things that aren't pleasant. See, the aql, what does the aql tell you? It tells you the cheesecake's bad for you, right? That's what it tells you. The aql tells you that. It says you don't want to eat that, empty calories, you're going to get sick, rot your teeth, right? But the shahwa tells you, no, I love that. That's good. Oh, I'm going to have such joy when I eat it. Oh, I don't have it yet, but I desire it. See, that's what it's doing. That's what the nafs is doing. The aql says, okay, every once in a while, I'll reward you for being a good nafs. Right? So maybe on the Eid, I'll have a piece of cheesecake. Right? But the intellect, this is the rule of the intellect. And so this is important because if the aql is absent in the decision-making process, then what happens is the nafs chooses apparent goods. It chooses pleasure. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ said, حُفَّتَ النَّارُ بِالشَّهَوَاتِ. This is going to take you to hell. حُفَّتَ النَّارُ بِالشَّهَوَاتِ. Drugs, right? People love to feel happy. Drugs make people feel happy. Right? You shouldn't know that. But people like drugs. It makes them feel happy. So they go after them, they obtain the goods, they feel joy. When it's absent, they feel desire. So they become addicted. Right? That's because drugs are an apparent good to the nafs. It looks like it's a good thing. It's going to help me deal with my troubles, just have a highball, loosen up, got so much stress at work. Right? This is the nafs speaking. But the aql says, khamar, it's bad. al-khaba'ith, right? So, عَسَى أَن تُحِبُّوا شَيْئًا وَهُوَ شَرٌّ لَكُمْ. Maybe you love a thing, your nafs loves it, it's an apparent good, but it's evil for you. وَعَسَى أَن تَكْرَهُوا شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. And maybe you dislike a thing, but it's good for you. وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Allah knows, so listen to what I'm saying. With your aql, أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. I'm giving you good advice. The aql knows. If you listen with your fitrah, then you'll know, you're right. It's not good for me. Khamr's not good. But a little bit of it is good in moderation. Allah says, there's benefit in it. But the sinfulness, the harm is worse. Maslaha wa mafsada. That's tarjih. Which one? And that's where the aql says, I'd rather give up my moderate drinking, right, and prohibit alcohol if it's going to mean that people out there won't get addicted and won't suffer who can't be moderate with it, right? So that's a whole other way of thinking about this. So that's the quwwa shahwaniyah. Now, it has another aspect, which is aversion, because it also has dar' al-mafsada. And there, it has hatred, right? Because the hatred is, and then it has pain or sorrow. And then it has fear. The hatred is of evil in and of itself, right? But it could also hate what is an apparent evil. عَسَى أَن تَكْرَهُوا شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. So حُفَّتَ الْجَنَّةُ بِالْمَكَارِهِ. So you can't let it choose. The aql has to choose because it will hate the wrong thing. It will hate apparent evils, like exercising, because it's tiresome. I'd rather just lie down, right? Praying, fasting. Why do they have to fast? You're just depriving yourself. People, you see people live in the West. People are you're not eating, not even drinking. Wow, that's so hard. Well, one, it teaches you discipline. Two, it's good for you, and they've proven this now. Temporary periods of caloric withdrawal is actually a really positive thing for the body. Sumu tasihhu, it's a hadith. Fast and get well. So it's good for you, even though it's difficult. So that's what we're being told. So, and then pain and sorrow is when it obtains the evil. So when it obtains it, it has pain, it has sorrow. This is the quwwa ghadabiyya. And then fear, it's the absence of evil, but it's thinking about it. This is the khawf. Now what Allah says, لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. They don't have khawf and huzn because they're not operating from this. This is people that are operating from this nafs. They're filled with fear and depression. Depression for things. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-hammi, min al-khawfi wal-huzn. I seek refuge in you from fear of things to come that haven't happened. That's what Ibn al-Qayyim says. And huzn from things that I've experienced, negative things. So the Prophet sought refuge from allowing the quwwa ghadabiyya, this soul, to determine in you these problems. So the quwwa al-aqliyya and then avoiding harm is muqaddam. You should avoid harm before you accrue good, right? So if you're in a situation, avoiding harm, like you want to get something in the middle of the road and there's a Mack truck coming down the road, you don't go for the maslaha, right? You go for the dar' al-mafsada. So and that's why it's very important to be aware of what's harmful. for you. And that's hikmah again, because the intellect now, Imam al-Ghazali, following the methodology of previous scholars, Imam al-Ghazali says that there are fada'il to the intellect. The intellect has speculative virtues and it has practical virtues. There's 5. And the first is understanding. And this is the ability to perceive things, essences. It's the ability, humans have understanding because when they see something, they're able to see it. This is what Adam alayhi salam had. Allah preferred him over all of creation because of this gift. When he aradahum ala al-malaika, right? He showed the angels all the names. In other words, Fakhruddin al-Razi said it was that he could see the mahiyya. He understood the essences of things. He could universalize. And this is called abstraction. The angels don't abstract. The angels have immediate intuitive knowledge. They don't abstract. They're programmed. So it's like a computer has a programming. يَفْعَلُونَ مَا يُؤْمَرُونَ. They do what they're programmed to do. Humans are not. Humans are actually willful creatures that are able to judge, to calculate. They have these gifts that enable them to make demonstrative proofs for things, enable them to abstract reality. And the ability to do that is extremely important. I think the time's up. So, does anybody have any questions about any of this? Clarifications? Is it advisable to have Sheikh to study the book of Imam al-Ghazali, or are we able to do it on our own? Unfortunately, there's no really good translations of the whole Ihya. There's some reasonable translations of Nabih Faris has a translation which I've read of the Kitab al-Ilm, and it's got egregious mistakes. He was a Christian, I think from Iraq. He made really big mistakes in the book. So you cannot read that book without coming away with misunderstandings. He calls it Ilm al-Mukashafa revelation, which it's not. It's unveilings. Anyway, and many other mistakes in there. But Dr. Abdul Hakim Winter translated the Breaking the Two. It's a good translation. And there's other books. The Book of Death has been translated. The Book 20 has been translated. There's several books, and they're useful. He's not a difficult writer. I mean, a lot of that introduction is a little difficult because it was the tradition of the Arabs to start their books with very complex language for the first 3 or 4 pages. It's called dibaja. It's kind of to weed out people because you start the book and you realize this is way over my head. So if you can read the first 3 pages in Arabic without having to try to figure out what they all mean, then you can probably read the book pretty well. But if you have a real hard time with the first few pages, then you probably shouldn't be reading the book yet. Traditionally, the book was studied with scholars. I had the blessing of studying it early on with a master of the book who pretty much memorized the whole book, Sheikh Ali Belfaqih, who was in the Emirates. He was exiled by the communists, and then he got kicked out of Saudi Arabia. He was a very strong, he used to get up in Medina, and he would just berate for all the bid'ahs that he saw, and it really troubled him, just the states of Muslims. But he lost his eyesight eventually, and I think Allah just did that to ease his pain, so he didn't have to see all the munkarat, because he just really. But I was once with him in the Central Mosque, and somebody was doing one of those, trying to get their feet next to, and he got up after, and he gave this really amazing talk about how that has nothing to do with the Sunnah, and the hadith is from Bashir ibn Nu'man ibn Bashir in Al-Bukhari, that they were children. He was like 8 years old, and he said, we used to put our feet like this, and Ibn Hajar says, if you do that now, people will get upset. In other words, it's not, I mean, Ibn Hajar, if it was sunnah, he would have said we should do this. But he said, don't do this. I mean, it was something, the kids were in the back and they were worried about not, letting shaitan come between them. So they did that, right? Because the Prophet used to put the children in the back. And he explained that. He said, that's not the sunnah, or it would be in the books of fiqh to do that. The sunnah is to have shoulder to shoulder. But that thing, you see people sometimes like this, seriously. And he said, we're not wrestlers. He said, you're in a prayer, you should have khushu', not worried about your feet, worry about your heart. So he used to finish sentences. He knew the book really well. Ithaf as-Sada. Zabidi wrote a commentary on the Ihya. Mm-hmm.
Do angels understand universal?
Well, this is a good question because I think in the Catholic tradition, I think they do. But Fakhruddin al-Razi would indicate that they don't have that knowledge, and that was the knowledge that Adam surpassed them with, according to Fakhruddin al-Razi. That's what they couldn't abstract like that, because he could see the universal. Now, seeing the universal is very important, because what is the universal, essentially? You have the particulars, and then you have the universal. What's the universal? What does universal mean? Huh? It means one out of many. So what seeing the universal is seeing the oneness in the diversity. So if you say cup, this is a particular glass, right? Everybody can see it. That's called a perception. If I turn away and say I have a glass in my hand, or I put it down, now I have the concept. The concept is in the mind. The percept is tangible. It's perceived by the senses. The concept is perceived by the internal senses, because you have 5 external senses, you have 4 internal senses. And the internal sense that primarily perceives it is the hiss al-mushtarak, which is common sense. It's able to put it all together and realize it's a glass. And then you have what's called the quwwa al-khayala, or the mutakhayyala, which is the imagination, which enables you to imagine the thing in your mind. Imago, to put the image in your mind. So when I say, in Arabic, a ka'as that's full is called ka'sun dihaq. Okay? When I say that, because you can abstract a glass, you don't have to think of a particular glass. You have the concept of the glass in your mind, which is the one, the universal, the essence of a glass. And this is why human beings by their nature are muwahidun. We are always making one. This is why Adam, by his nature, is a muwahid. So tawheed is what we're doing as human beings. That's how we communicate, through tawheed. Because we're speaking about things that we've abstracted in our minds and made one. We've made the many one. And this is the highest form of tawheed, is to make the many gods one. Because there's only one true God. All the other gods are false gods. So that's why it's important. Between heart diseases, mental illnesses, waswasa to shaitan. Waswasa is Imam Zarruq said that waswasa was either a mental illness, which we call obsessive compulsive now, or he said it was jahl bis sunnah. If it's something where you have compulsive behavior and you can't stop it, then it's a mental illness, and it should be treated as such. If you're like doing your wudu over and over again because you don't know if you have doubt, then your muwaswas has a different hukm from other people. So if you're somebody that has doubt all the time, you have a different hukm, and so you don't have to repeat things. So where does the decision we make come out from? And who does it physically, or where does it physically or metaphysically manifest? Irada is the will works with the intellect. The will is a faculty that enables you to do things. Irada, yuridu shay'an. And it's an attribute of God, irada. Is it okay to read translations of the Ihya? I think I answered that one. Are these other ones here? With so many corrupt leaders, is there any point in Muslims voting? Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayya says that if you're living in Western countries, then you should take lesser of two evils. So it depends. In terms of national races, in most of these countries they're not affected, but local government can affect. You can actually get gambling outlawed in local districts and things like that. I mean, there's things that people can do. So we have strict rules of engagement in war. On what basis would it be fair to say that no Muslim society now can really engage in warfare, distant warfare or nuclear warfare? I mean, personally, I just think Muslims shouldn't. It's crazy. You know, I once saw a cartoon, and in the first, it had these squares like this. And in the first one, it had like a British soldier with a gun fighting Muslims with swords, or French. So they obviously win, right? The next one, the Muslim had the gun, but the British had the machine gun. The next one, they had the machine guns, and the British had airplanes dropping bombs on them. And then the next one, the British had a tank. And then the next one, they had tanks, and the British had guns. And then in the next one, they had airplanes and guns and everything, and it showed a man in a nuclear room with his feet up on the desk with all the missiles in place to let them off. And this is the reality of the situation. Turkey, trust me, you saw how troubled that man was last night. That's the head of the AK party. He's an advisor to the president. You saw how disturbed he is by Palestine, right? I mean, that was genuine. You don't think they're troubled by it? And it's their next door neighbors. You think they can do anything about it without being toast? Seriously. I mean, be realistic. You know, Muslims, it's crazy. We're in a crazy situation. For me, the best thing, if you want to be violent in Palestine, you know, if you don't want to just deal with the fact that you're helpless, you can't really fight a nuclear power with SAM missiles that were made in Russia. Like, why are they selling them to you? Seriously, why is Russia selling them to you? Because they're just playing a game. You're just a pawn in their game, right? Or your Kalashnikov. Why are they selling you Kalashnikovs? Muslims don't even produce their own weapons. So, okay, give us weapons so we can fight you, jihad. No, but seriously. To me, the best thing that you can do, if you want to be violent, use rocks. Seriously. Stop the missiles. I believe it. I'm against shooting those missiles. I think it's actually incurring more harm, it's wrong. It's just wrong. I really believe this in my heart of hearts. I believe this. I'm not saying this because I'm a quietist or because I'm a pacifist or because, no. I am saying this because on moral grounds, I believe it is unethical to bring that kind of destruction on women and children. It's just wrong. The primary, the single most important thing in human beings is to defend their women and children. I mean, that's every man, that's what they want to do. And I understand the humiliation and degradation that's going on. Trust me, I understand it and I get it. And I get the impulses and I understand that. But we've been using these strategies as a community, as an ummah, for 100 years. And things, to me, they're worse than they've ever been. So for me, it's just like, I don't know. I think, let's try some other strategies. David and Goliath. David, alayhi salam, Jewish prophet, right? When he went up against Jalut, and this is in our tafsirs, but the Quran has the story, right? Talut was Saul, and he was the commander. Jalut was this giant, like 7'5" or something like that, huge, had his weapons, spear, sword, all this armor. And they didn't have anybody amongst the Israelites. They said, لا طاقة لنا بجالوت وجنوده. We have no ability to fight Jalut and his army. We can't do it, right? What did the people with who ظنوا أنهم ملاقوا الله, what did they say? كم من فئة قليلة غلبت فئة كثيرة بإذن الله. How many a small group defeated a big group by the permission of God? How did David defeat him? He was a shepherd. He wore shepherd's clothes. He had a sling, and he used to kill wolves. So he became very good at hitting moving targets. He would just shoot them, and that was like a very powerful weapon. But it wasn't used in warfare. So when he came and he told Saul, "I'll go fight Goliath," all the Jews that were there, they laughed at him. This is this little shepherd kid. Give us a break. He said, "Well, nobody else wants to do it, so let's let him have a go at it." So they dressed him in all this armor, and they put him on the best horse. They gave him a sword, a spear. So he's riding out there to meet Jalut on his own terms. He's meeting him on his own terms. But superior power. He turns around. This is in the tafsir. He turns around, and all the Jewish soldiers, they say to Saul, Jabun al-Fata, he's afraid. He gets back, he says, "Listen, I can't fight like this. I need to take all this stuff off." Takes all the armor off. "I don't need the horse, just give me my slingshot." And he goes out there, and now Goliath is like looking at this little, skinny little shepherd with his shepherd clothes and a slingshot. What is this? And he just, right between the eyes, drops dead. That's thinking differently. Do you remember, seriously, when I was in America, when they showed those Palestinians throwing rocks at the tanks, look what happened when that Chinese guy just stood in front of the tanks. How much sympathy that brought. All you're doing is giving them an excuse to squelch you. Because even the worst of people in America, if they were being oppressed and bombed and these things happening and they weren't fighting back, even the worst people would say that's not fair. It's not fair. But you shoot off your little rockets. They've got American technology to stop it from happening. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. But I'm not there, and I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not making judgments on people. I'm not in their situation, and I pray for their safety and that Allah gives us, elevates our state and our status and restores us to what we had before. That's my hope. But like I said, I'm not judging people. I'm not. I'm just strategically, I'm a strategic thinker. I'm not a tactician. There's a difference between strategy and tactics. I think long term. I don't think short term tactical stuff. It's because I played football, not soccer, Soccer, you just run around, never think. They don't have a timeout. That's what the whole third world. You just play soccer, never think, never stop. Maybe we should do something different. We're getting beat. You just keep playing. In football, you stop every play and reassess. If you've ever been in a huddle, quarterback's like, "What are you doing over there? Stop, block those guys over there. Hey, you do," right? We need different strategy. Yeah. Can we complain to God about our problems? Absolutely, we should. We shouldn't complain to people. Nobody likes to hear your problems. But God loves to hear our problems. In fact, there's a hadith that God will not alleviate the tribulation because he loves to hear the people calling on him. You mentioned how even Imam al-Ghazali felt the corrupting power of influence. What lessons can someone in a position of power learn from his life, particularly in relation to political power? Political power is very dangerous. that's why I'm a monarchist. I really think monarchy is, in the absence of a khalifa, that's what we got. And that's the next best thing. In the absence of a khilafah, the next best thing was a monarchy. So I think monarchs are, it's much better to have somebody who's raised from the time they're little, understanding they're going to be in power. They get everything they want. You can't corrupt a king. You cannot corrupt a king. You can corrupt a Democrat very easily. You can't corrupt a king. A king's either corrupt by nature or he's not. But you can't corrupt him. But you can corrupt a Democrat. We said that seeking knowledge is obligatory on every Muslim. What does the word knowledge mean here? I mean, we're going to get, that's the whole book, is explaining what knowledge is. So we'll get there, inshallah. Also, how should we seek knowledge? He's also going to talk about that and what type of knowledge you should seek. What compass can be used to distinguish between good knowledge and bad knowledge? He's going to do that also. And tafakkur, what is it? He'll talk about that too. So we'll get there, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. You said that one should avoid what is harmful before one does doing good. Does not good deeds turn into more good deeds? No, it's not. They're not mutually exclusive, that idea. But the point is that the first priority is self-preservation. You know, it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The first thing, you have to get your security down. If you don't have that, you can't do anything. So, but it doesn't. I mean, we do good, but the most important thing is avoiding harm, which is why the Prophet ﷺ, that's a priority in his religion, is the avoidance of harm. So you avoid harmful things, and then you do what you can from the good things. Right? Because the Prophet said, إِذَا نَهِيتُكُمْ عَنْ شَيْءٍ فَاجْتَنِبُوهُ. Right? But وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ. You know, do what you're able to do. Right? So the istita'a, I mean, good is endless. Right? But the harmful things for you, there's lots of good things that you could do, but the harmful things, you have to avoid them. Mm-hmm.
Today's morning class, class of Tasawwuf, the Shaykh mentioned how you shouldn't expose your deficiencies to the people. And Imam Ghazali does that in his autobiography.
I know, that's a good point. So he's saying that Imam al-Ghazali, in the Aqidah class, they were saying, or Tasawwuf, Tazkiyah class, they were saying you shouldn't expose your faults, whereas Imam al-Ghazali does. That generally sitr is the basis. Imam al-Ghazali, though, was really trying to help people that were afflicted. It's like somebody who was known to be an alcoholic, and he goes around telling people how bad it is and what it did to me. So they're like a witness, right? Or somebody who was in prison. Like Malcolm used to talk about that. It was known that he was in prison. It was said on national TV. So that was a benefit for people that are similar to him. So Imam al-Ghazali was known to be arrogant. He was known to be, those things were known by people. And so he was saying, I know these things because I had them. And in that way, so it's... Mm-hmm.
I just want to clarify. You mentioned how amongst the two quwwa, they have virtues if they're arbitrated by their aql. And then you mentioned hatred, pain, and fear.
Right.
Is that quwwa ghadabiyya or?
No, that's still in the shahwa. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because the quwwa ghadabiyya also has, it has these capacities also. In terms of goods, right, it's really not applicable. So you don't because it doesn't, it's really about warding off harm. But the virtues that it has the virtue of ghadab, which is anger. So, and anger is towards it's towards evil. You know, it's angry at any wrongs or injustices, right? But the second one then is shaja'a, or courage. And shaja'a is in the presence of a harm that it knows it can overcome. So it's not courage. It's not courage to commit suicide. That's actually tahawwur. It's not courage to run into, you know, a group and just get killed if you know you're going to die. It's not courage. It's actually it's the extreme. Courage is the mean between cowardice and foolhardiness. So it's actually foolhardy. The Prophet ﷺ, his religion didn't have people that committed suicide. And people who say, oh, what about the Sahabi that was flung over the wall he covered himself with pillows. And he actually survived. He opened the gate. Now, he could have died, and that's courage, because anytime you go into battle, you could die. So that's courage. But the idea that you're absolutely going to die, no. And there's some of the fatwa are about what's called inghimas fil adu, which is to throw yourself into the enemy knowing that you're going to die in order to save another group of people. In those situations, the ulama considered it permissible, and there are Khalid ibn Walid took a group, and even the Americans, if you look at the highest decoration that they give, it's usually given to people that sacrifice themselves for others. You know, like jumped on a grenade and blew themselves up to save the other men in the platoon, right? So even they acknowledge that. So that's a different thing. But that's not what when you're not saving people, when you're not, there's no benefit to it other than to say, well, you can't kill my spirit. Like, we'll show you, we can stand up to this thing. And that's why traditionally when suicide bombing first showed up, it didn't show up from the Muslims. It was a bid'ah that came out of well, it's a kamikaze tradition. The Japanese used it. It was also a sakurai. It originally came from Jewish zealots that were called the sakurai. The hashashin practiced it. But when it originally came up, all the ulama prohibited it. They really, if you read the early fatwas, they were all against it. But over time, like the satellite dish, when it first showed up, they said it was haram. When the photograph first showed up, they said it was haram. Everybody starts using it. Ammat al-balwa. The ulama kind of said, well, okay, as long as you only use it for good. Anyway, all right. You know, I'm going to tell you something, and I really mean this. In terms of knowledge, you know, if you ask me, qama zaydun wa qa'da amrun, and you ask me, what's qa'da there? And I say it's a fi'al, and it's madi, and it's mabni ala al-fath. You know, what's zaydun? Zaydun is fa'ilun, it's marfu'. You know, it's a grammar, it's a science, I studied it. You know, and if you're studying grammar with me, I might make a mistake. I'm not a master of grammar by any means, but I did study Arabic grammar, and I can read pretty well. So, you know, if you're studying grammar with me, you should trust me on that, right? If you're going to study with me. I mean, if you find somebody, there's a lot of people far more knowledgeable than me in grammar, better to study with. Or if you study a book of fiqh that I studied and I can teach, you know. In terms of dealing with what's going on right now, I'm just thinking, I don't know. I really mean this. I don't know. And I wish I could say something definitive to all of you and say, you know, here's the reality. I'm just saying, I've thought a lot about this stuff. These are my conclusions. Take them or leave them. Seriously. You know, I'm not a khalifa. I'm not, you know, I'm a talib ilm. I don't even consider myself alim. I am talibu ilman, right? So, if it makes sense, that's fine. If it doesn't make sense, that's fine. But this hatred of people for using their intellects to the best of their ability, this idea somehow that, you know, oh, you know, what's this? This is a sellout. What, you know, what are you talking about? We don't do that. We don't do that. No, I don't know. I'm just telling you these are my conclusions. That's all. But all this hatred in our ummah and our community for dissension, everybody has to, zig heil. It's like everybody has to just toe the party line, do what everybody else says, follow. And if you don't, if you just deviate from the common thread that everybody seems to be attached to, that personally I think has really brought a lot of tribulation and despair onto this community, I don't know. So that's all I can tell you. I really don't, I'm not, I swear to God, I've just wanted to get out. I want to go into uzla, just get out of this whole thing, because it's just madness. I just feel like you can't even speak anymore without just everybody just jumping on you. And it's like, what? And then I'm really curious about just converts. It's like I converted to this religion. You'd think people would be a little happy that somebody converted to a religion. Hey, he's on our side. No, he's not on our side, because he doesn't agree with all of the things that we say that we should be doing today. Even though he accepts the religion, he accepts the Quran, he accepts the Hadith, but he doesn't accept my way of thinking about the Quran or the Hadith, and therefore he's evil. That's really strange. I find it really strange. I mean, so many converts are alienated from this religion. I'm speaking from, I'll give you one example. I know a lady who, she just converted, and she had people over for iftar, and she made a little sweet by hand. Most people just go now to the store and buy some cake, but no, she took the time to make this pie, and then she serves the pie, and one of the guests that were there was, is there vanilla in that? And she said, yes. So what's he do? He goes and literally dumped it in the garbage. Like she just, what is that? What's happened to people? Just basic humanity, just basic decency. It's really strange, but if you want to know why so many Muslims, in America, it's like everybody, it's like 20% now. Did you see that? It was 50% a few years ago. Now, on these polls, there's only 20% that have a favorable opinion of Muslims. So you're talking to 80% of the people don't like us and don't want us there. That's not a very good situation, And then we've got Muslims dancing about being happy like a house without a roof. I don't know what the hell you're happy about, man. I have no idea. Yeah, I wanted to actually do a video that showed all of them dancing and then showed the Palestinians and the Syrians and the Iraqis and just end it by saying, the field Negroes are happy that the house Negroes are happy. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك